Pep Guardiola's Manchester City tactics are nothing new. In fact, they're pretty much borrowed from one of his biggest influences. Don't believe me? Let me show you. Pep Guardiola has been known to be pushing the boundaries of what is tactically possible and how much he can dominate the football with his teams in recent seasons, with Manchester City being no exception. Having used inverted fullbacks at Bayern Munich, he brought that trait to Manchester City for large parts of his tenure there as well. However, recently, he's been using a whole new idea that really comes back to an old idea. So right now, Manchester City nominally line up in a 4-3-3, a system that can trace its roots in football very far back. Some people say that the Dutch in the 1970s were the first to really play 4-3-3 in the modern sense, while others argue that you can trace it all the way back to the 1920s. Regardless, it's certainly not a new formation, has been a very, very popular formation for many years, and isn't exactly why we're talking about Guardiola's City side being a tactical revolution. Guardiola has been known for moving his fullbacks inside into central midfield positions when his team have the ball in order to help his team overload the midfield more. However, in recent times we've seen City moving away from this idea and towards the idea of John Stones moving in from centre half, with the three back players now playing as a very wide back three. The right back and the left back, when City are on the ball, still maintain relatively wide positions in order to give the central midfield players someone to pass to. Meanwhile, the centre midfield players develop a box in midfield. I mean, it's literally just a box, with the forward three players still maintaining relatively similar positions. What this does is gives Manchester City a lot of options when they have the ball, especially given that their four men in the central midfield positions are going to overwhelm opposition midfields by the sheer strength of numbers. Now, the reason other teams don't traditionally line up this way is that it's theoretically very weak if you lose the ball. So you have to trust your players not to lose it cheaply in these deep positions. Otherwise, teams, especially those with quick forward players, could exploit the lack of defensive structure you have at this moment. When Manchester City do lose the ball, they drop more into traditional 4-3-3 formation and defend that way until they retrieve the ball. However, they don't tend to lose the ball very much. It is extremely difficult to get the ball off of this City team when they're playing in this style, and this has been one of the very large contributors to their incredible run into the season, including their absolute domination of Real Madrid in the Champions League semi-final second leg. In that game against one of the world's great club sides, Manchester City quite simply looked like they had an extra player, and in a sense they did, because their centre-back is moving into midfield. It's sort of like cheating in an extra player. Again, you are leaving yourself more defensively vulnerable, but that doesn't really matter when the other team can't get a kick of the ball. It was an incredibly impressive tactical display, especially in the first half. It's one of the most impressive displays I can remember for a long time, with the Madrid midfield completely dominated and unable to get anywhere near City. Now, so far we've talked about how Pep has managed to bring an extra player into midfield using a flexible formation, but this shape is nothing new. First off, you can trace this idea back to the old WM formation from way back in the day. In modern football terms, the WM could be written down as a 3-2-2-3, but largely speaking, the box in midfield was not the same as we see it now in Pep Guardiola's team. In fact, the two sides of the team were essentially a 5 in defence and a 5 in attack, and the ball would be kicked a long way from the back when you win it up to your forward players. In essence, it was actually a very simple formation back in the day, and one of the reasons that it's been phased out of football is because it's quite exploitable by more compact, midfield-oriented systems of play. That being said, there is an argument that no matter how you drop football formations, at the end of the day it kind of always comes back to 5 behind the ball and 5 in front of the ball. And there is also a debate on how much formations matter anyway, given that players creating goals are going to be breaking formation, midfielders running from deep, fullbacks running way out of position. Formations are a whole interesting topic that we might touch on another day. However, the point of this video was not to say that the WM formation has existed, but really what we're here to talk about is where Guardiola's ideas for this came from his self-admitted biggest influence in football, Johan Cruyff. Cruyff was one of the great footballing minds of all time, arguably the most influential player of all time, given his stellar playing career making him one of the greatest players of all time, and his managerial career revolutionising Barcelona and modern football. Cruyff played a 3-4-3 diamond, with his wide centre-backs playing more like a right and left back. The idea of this formation was to be able to dominate the midfield and create triangles absolutely everywhere, therefore making it very easy for your players to pass pass to each other. For those who don't know, the idea of triangles in football is again not new, but Cruyff took it to an extreme where all over the pitch there are patterns that allow your players an easy option of pass almost always, because they're always at angles to each other instead of standing in straight lines where it's very difficult from the rightmost player to pass to the leftmost player. When broken into triangles like this, it becomes a much easier game because you almost always have options to either side. Now this central deep player in Cruyff's 3-4-3 formation, that was a young man by the name of Pep Guardiola. Guardiola will be the first person to tell you that Cruyff was a huge influence in his managerial ideas, even going as far to say, "I knew nothing about football before I met Johan Cruyff." A huge statement from one of the greatest managers of all time, and it really does show you how much he cares for and loves the legacy that Cruyff has left. But going back to the purely formational aspect, this Cruyff 3-4-3 can very easily be changed into exactly what Pep's Man City team do in possession, if you do one simple thing. You turn the diamond in midfield around to make it a square. I mean, that's literally it. And if you turn the diamond around, the formations are the same. The largest theoretical difference with this is actually that the diamond in midfield is slightly better for creating triangle patterns, but the box is a little bit more defensively solid. Adding to this that for the box we have John Stones stepping out from centre back to partner Rodri in midfield, creating a double pivot, a very common part of modern football formations. This formation is extremely difficult to play against if the team playing it are very good at keeping the ball, and checks notes, Manchester City are. With Guardiola being a key man in the old Cruyff dream team, it's clear that he values that idea of dominating the midfield and outnumbering the other team, keeping the ball off them, and generally tiring them out as they have to chase the team with the ball the whole game. It's notable that in that Manchester City vs Real Madrid match, Ancelotti took off arguably his two most talented midfield players in Toni Kroos and Luka Modric in order to just try and get players who could still run. By the 60-minute mark, both Modric and Toni Kroos were completely zapped out of energy, just due to the fact that even if they were trying to play conservatively and trying not to go chasing the Man City players, they never got a touch of the ball. The player Guardiola was effectively the brain of Cruyff's dream team in the 80s that dominated and revolutionised football in such an exciting way. And now, all these years later, the idea of this box, diamond, 4 in a square has rushed back into prevalence in people's thinking, not least because of this Manchester City side, who have used a new spin on the old dream team idea, the 3-4-3 in possession, that completely stretches the opposition team. However, Manchester City's version might be even better, as it is theoretically a little bit more defensively solid, due to having a centre-back who can instantly drop in, as opposed to in the old Cruyff team, it was a little bit more tricky to get a more solid defensive formation if you did lose the ball. A modern twist on an absolute classic football formation, Guardiola's tactical ideas at Manchester City have once again propelled his team into being possibly the best in the very world, along with, lots of money. But that being said, I hope you have a little bit more understanding of where these ideas that Pep is using have come from. This has been Clan Jackal. Please like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube thingies. Please, 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 please do. Thank you.